Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Friday, and it's a friendly Friday. It is May the 9th, and I want to say thanks for being here. I just got a chance to say bye to my kids who act like I'm actually leaving every freaking time that I go upstairs to do the podcast. They're just like, bye, Dad, love you. Bye, Dad, hugs. I'm like, I'm going 40 feet away from you tops, and I am within the same dwelling. But that is a special gift that I have. You guys gave me that gift, so I'm really grateful for all of you that are out there. We're going to have Steve Friend come on and talk about it. We got a new pope. We got a new report saying that maybe it wasn't Donald Trump's fault that we somehow had airplanes fall out of the sky. That's interesting. CNN kind of downplays that. We've got a verdict that came out this week that is truly out of control. And you guys probably won't believe where it comes from. So I think that's kind of fun to do. So a verdict in a murder case that a lot of people forgot about. We're going to bring that back up. We got a new nominee for the United States Attorney in D.C. I don't know if it matters because I don't know if Washington, D.C. is still America. What else we got? We got a couple other things in here. Things that are switching around in the Trump org chart. Trump's tariffs changing around. It's going to be an interesting little show. And I got some fun clips that we're going to dig in from the archives. Things that are going on. Apparently, you should be buying stock. That's what Donald Trump says. We say, I don't know if it's stock, but buy your staples. Get yourself squared away with things that you might need in your life. And one of the things you might need is coffee. Because if you are not properly caffeinated, how will you handle your day? BlackoutCoffee.com/KYLE is the coffee company we use here in the Seraphin household. Let me just tell you a little something. Today, I hit the grind. Actually, I turned a knob. I turned the grind knob to 8 out of 10. And it was grinding up all my coffee. And I was like, okay, today's going to be rough. I'm going to need the coffee boost. And it turned out that we only ground espresso at super fine for espresso because my wife left the setting on the wrong one. And you know what? That's okay. So we'll use espresso for later on and this weekend. Ground it up again, and I'm rocking. We've been telling you about Blackout Coffee for a couple of months. You guys know what they are. They're a great company. They're working on grit and hard work and American values and building things up the right way, the way you're supposed to do it. They've got their own warehouse. They started in a garage. Now they're pushing out all of their own coffee, packing every single thing themselves, employing 30 hardworking Americans, no corporate nonsense, no BS. It's just damn good coffee. There is some sitting right here in my cup on the desk. I'm going to probably be drinking it in the breaks. If you guys want to get yourself some, check out blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. They make a damn good cup of coffee. Even if Steve Friend doesn't drink coffee, I'm drinking enough for the both of us. You guys can keep the American dream alive. You can drink some real coffee from a good company that actually cares about the same kind of values that you are interested in. Blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Get yourself a French press too. Get yourself one that's made out of steel so you don't accidentally do the most clumsy thing when you are still trying to get your eyes awake and smash glass into a corian or into a granite countertop. Ask me how I know that's a bad idea. Blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. We're going to get into today's news, commentary, and probably some snarky wit with Steve Friend right now. Okay. You know what I realized? I don't know that I even added Steve to the right spot, but there is Steve Friend. Here he is. How are you doing, buddy?
Present and accounted for. Have you had the experience when your kids are waving you by? Are they still in that they love mommy a little bit more than you phase? Mine will say, hey, Dad, instead of going on TV, why doesn't mom fill in for you and you can come outside and play?
That's an interesting thing. No, my kids actually think that all day long what I do are called interviews. At least that's what they used to do. And so they'd be like, Dad, do you have more interviews today? And it's like, it's not always an interview, it turns out. But no, I think they're so excited because I'm a novelty.
Oh, yes. I mean, when the Fox News truck arrived into our driveway, we have photos of them posing, and right now they're just so over it. I remember I did a show once that I was really genuinely happy and satisfied. Sometimes you just are crisp, you had enough of your coffee in the morning out of your Patriot cooler and just plugged everything correctly. You were articulate, you made all your points, and I was feeling good, and I said, man, I just had a good show. And my son looked at me and goes, did you mention my name? I said, no. And he goes, well, all right. And looked back
Yeah.
down.
How good was it, right? How good could it possibly have been, Steve, if you didn't even mention your kids' names? My littlest one is now taking up the cry. She's like got excited about what the others do. So my tiny little baby Maddie is like this little blonde-haired, blue-eyed machine that doesn't know how to say no and doesn't have any self-control and doesn't understand gravity or broken glass or any other danger. And she just wanders around like waiting to find some sort of lethal danger that we have to rescue her from. And whenever you tell her like, no, don't put your hand in the blender, that's where the things get chopped up. She's like, why? She's in the why phase. It's fun. Yeah. Anyway, I get to see all of that. That's all good times. You know what we all have to do sometimes is travel. So I've got this like really kind of fun thing. We've been talking about Jasmine Crockett. Have you listened to these clips of her? She's out there talking about how planes go fall out the sky. I'm pretty sure this administration is trying to kill us, or whatever she says it like. I won't do you're my black woman impersonator when necessary. You want to do a Jasmine?
I don't know. You're doing some really good business on YouTube right now. Maybe we should dial that back.
Internal FAA report downplayed the risk of data outages affecting the Newark air traffic controllers. Apparently, they took the Newark air traffic controllers and they moved into a new site in Philadelphia. Now, you're going to say, doggone it, it's that Trump administration. They're trying to kill us. Of course, the agency experts concluded that the odds of a dangerous communication breakdown were extremely unlikely, about 1 in 11 million, which means that we've gotten to the number 11 million, and we had one of those moments where there was 30 seconds of dead air with an FAA air traffic controller trying to do the job out of nowhere. Data outages, including a failure of about 90 seconds of radar and radio service. People don't realize this, Steve, but like when there's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's not just like sit in the plane, hit the autopilot button like they did in the 70s movie, and then the plane just lands itself.
The inflatable pilot's not a real thing?
It's not a real thing, the inflatable pilot. You have to actually do quite a bit of comms. And the comms that go on in the chatter that happens between ATC, there's a radar station, there's a visual communication that actually puts people in final, which puts them on the air, on the actual tarmac. Yeah, 90 seconds is an eternity. Imagine 90 seconds of dead air on your podcast.
I mean, imagine 90 seconds of dead air if you were a cop involved in a use of force situation, like a gunfight or even a physical altercation, and you're calling for help.
What about 90 seconds of dead air on Fox News? That would be an equally kind of scary thing, right?
Well, for the people who are waiting for the pocket catheter commercials, that would be terrifying.
Okay, I'm going to talk more about the FAA thing in a second because, like I said, it's not the Trump's fault. But it turns out there was a dead air moment on Fox. They didn't know what to do with it either. Here's a simulation of how scary it could get. This is just one person on the plane. A real plane has, anywhere from 60 to 200 people on it. This happened on Fox last night. I just have to cover it because it's crazy.
So this is about incompetency. It's not about ideology. It's not about.
Oh, hold on. We're just going to get some help here for Cameron. Let me come back to Lydia while we get some help for Cameron here. Lydia,
I think we're going to go to a break real quick.
Did he just like reorganize his papers as opposed to going and helping the woman that was on the ground?
Uh-huh. Can you explain what people didn't see if they were listening and what the heck that was?
She was the one guest at the desk talking to the host and collapsed and fell on the ground, seemingly unconscious. And the host says, we're going to get to somebody to handle that for me. And I'm going to look back to camera one and reorient myself and talk this thing into a break. After the pocket catheter commercial and hurricane, we'll be back to talk to somebody about something completely different. And we'll ignore this entire segment.
Yeah. A lady just fell over, completely, like eyes open, blacked out, fell off her chair at Fox, and they didn't know what to do. That may be because Donald Trump is taking the entire bench from Fox News and putting him into his administration. But it may be because, first of all, he was British, right? And
yeah, they don't. Chivalry is kind of dead over there, right?
Unless you're Islamic, I think, yeah. Unless it's like whatever. Unless it's not chivalry, it's Sharia now. The thing that is that's obvious to me is that men don't know how to react to emergencies because they've never actually thought about what would happen if something went wrong. So that's a good reminder to people this morning. If you've never put yourself in a position where you go like, if this happened, what would I do? Mm-hmm. You will not rise to the occasion. You will shuffle your papers and ignore a lady who is passed out on the floor in unknown status on live national television. That will happen to you.
I mean, we're not insisting that people all become like emergency medics, but I mean, a little bit of planning goes a long way. Like if you're traveling and you stay at a hotel, it would behoove you to take 45 seconds to look at the back of the door and see what the emergency exit is in case there's a fire and there's a lighting situation. You can guide your family out as opposed to shuffling the papers and waiting for the flames to just consume you all.
You should probably also, my wife and I actually have been talking about this with the kiddos. We should also probably talk about that when you're on the plane. The exits in the front are over here and here. There are 2 behind you. Find the nearest exit to you. There it is. Okay, so here's the deal.
How many seats is it, rows, until you get to the emergency exit, because visibility will be an issue?
If you've ever gone through emergency aircraft egress the way that I did, and I went out in Spokane, Washington, and they train you how to like get yourself out of a helicopter or various different types of aircraft while you're wearing a blacked out mask and you're underwater upside down on a breath hold, which is harder than what most people will have to do. They always teach you, yes, like how many seats, and then how do you determine what those seats are? How do you know when you're at one to the next? So are you counting headrests? Are you counting armrests? Can you do something by tactile feel and get your way through? Anyway, that may or may not be necessary if you decide to fly in or out of Newark or Philadelphia, because they have outages and they could drop you, I don't know, in a lake, in a ocean, or maybe just on the ground upside down. Maybe you'll just end up in Toronto upside down because you have a female pilot. Anything is possible. A 2022 FA, who was president in 22?
Well, Kamala Harris, right? Like
Kamala Harris or whoever was running the auto pen.
Whoever was running the auto pen, the human Roomba, allegedly was in charge.
So we keep hearing that it was the fault of Trump from the Democrats. They want to go out there and take anything that happened today and they want to put it on him. It turns out there was an FAA report in 2022 saying that relocating these things could cause a major crisis, or the severity of a potential outage would be significant. But they only rated it a medium risk because the chance of it happening was extremely remote. That means they use those government numbers that looked really good. It's one of those moments where you're like, oh, what I want to do is get to the following answer. Can you justify that? Mm-hmm. Government's quite good at that, and it turns out they did that in 2022. So I think that was when Buttigieg was in charge.
At least Jake Sullivan was at the helm then. I think that was probably the most likely. Him and Susan Rice, some combination of aforementioned parties. Jill Biden, perhaps?
Yeah. Or it could have been this guy who wanted everyone to know that he was not senile, he was not a problem, and he totally had everything under control. This is Joe Biden going out to defend his legacy with his counterpart on The View. Have you seen this yet?
No, I don't.
Oh, this will be good. I like catching Steve a little bit cold with this stuff. So here's our former president on The View explaining that he was not mentally deficient.
Mr. President, since you left office, there have been a number of books that have come out, deeply sourced from Democratic sources, that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. In the final year of your presidency, what is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that, number one. Number two, think of what we were left with. We were left with a circumstance where we had an insurrection when I started, not since the Civil War. We had a circumstance where we were in a position that the pandemic, because of the incompetence of the last outfit, end up over 1 million people dying. And we're also in a situation where we found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in the interest of time. And so we went to work, and we got it done. And one of the things and
Alyssa, one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us, and they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day. I mean,
rate that response, please, Steve Friend.
They proved the allegation there, which is just chef's kiss. I mean, he's a politician.
The best is that his wife stepped in and explained what was going on while he looked down like a bad boy. Like, yes. I didn't do good.
He looked down at the notes on the desk, for those who are only listening, first of all, to say, no matter what you get asked, and we're telling you the question ahead of time, of course, mention January 6th, but say insurrection, because
definitely
that really,
say insurrection.
That polls well for us. Coronavirus has to be referenced. And then, there were some basic things that we had to, do.
But I won't get into those because I don't want to mess with things because of the instances of time.
Well, the significance of the passage of time can be significant.
It's the
most powerful human on the planet for 4 years.
We just narrowly scraped by. Since you brought up J6, I got a J6 thing here. Maybe somewhere in here. I got to find out where she is. She's on my list here. There she is. So we have a new member of the Trump administration because the Senate did the thing that they normally do, which is that they kicked the ball. They decided not to let Ed Martin have a confirmation hearing, and therefore he won't be confirmed as the permanent United States attorney in D.C. Instead, we got Judge Denine. Again, like I said, that's probably why the lady passed out on Fox News, is because, well, do you want to tell people that you're going to be going to Fox now? Do you want to let them know since they've finally gotten deep in the bench?
Well, once they elevate Nicole Parker to the administration, probably to be the next director of the FBI, I mean, there'll be a nice contributor spot that I might be able to land in there and maybe more articulately, or at least originally, proffer the ideas as opposed to laundering the suspendables ideas to Nikki Parker, which she can then proliferate to the Fox News audience between the Pocket Catheter and Hurricane commercials.
Judge Janine's going to jump in. She's got some thoughts about JSIC. This is her a couple days after the fact. She wanted to let you know that you were a really bad person if you happened to be outside the Capitol, and this was unconscionable activity.
I want to be clear. The actions at the United States Capitol 3 days ago were deplorable, reprehensible, outright criminal. These frightening and repulsive actions represent the most significant breach on our Capitol in over 200 years. And I don't care what happened in the past or whether those who did it think the election was stolen. That is not justification. 75 million of us are still angry about the election, but we don't storm the Capitol. And stop looking for other people to blame, including those dirtbag terrorists, Antifa. To those of you who did this, you did it of your own will, and you will be held accountable.
Yeah, America.
She just looks like a marionette puppet from Team America to me.
She delivered her lines like a marionette puppet, too. That was really impressive. That
Good
she just
use of alliteration. Very, very, I mean,
she used the
who's a
deplorable
professional
term,
broadcaster.
too. I like being a professional broadcaster so that people know that when I give them the thoughts I have, someone else clearly wrote them. Pause, say the line, repeat the line. Clearly wrote them, right? I mean, it's just, nobody talks like that. No normal people go out there and go, Steve, it's really good to see you today. I'm so glad that you also were going to your mailbox to pick up checks, notes, bills. You know, it's like, why are you like this? Who told you that that was professional? Did you do that when you were like a judge on the bench? Where was she even a judge? Do you even know? I couldn't
don't
care
even
enough.
know if she's a judge.
Hold on,
She just like assumed that moniker. I mean, Judge Judy, she around? Maybe we could get her up there.
Judge Judy might be. Okay, here we go. I got the ABC News story. Again, Trump appoints Fox News host Jeanine Pirro. Like I said, the bench is running deep, so Steve Friend is up next pretty soon. He's going to be on the 5. We'll appoint former prosecutor Jeanine Pirro as the interim United States attorney for the District of Columbia. I don't think that District of Columbia matters that much.
No, I don't care. That's fine.
But Ed Martin actually got moved into a position that's probably better, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Send
right?
Tom Tillis a fruit basket. Send that fruitcake, Tom Tillis, a fruit basket of thanks before you primary his butt out of office, because now Ed Martin gets to be an assistant attorney general in charge of weaponization at DOJ, and I think that that's maybe more up his lane.
Following Trump's loss in 2020, Pirro pushed false allegations of election fraud involving voting machines and was later among the Fox employees named for the Dominion voting systems defamation lawsuit that had Fox News settling for $787.5 million, admitting that the statements were indeed false. In 2019, she was reportedly suspended from Fox News because she questioned the loyalty of Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and her loyalty to the Constitution by citing Omar's Muslim faith. I actually got no problem with either of those things. I say good, that's on the ball. The fact that they turned around and ran like an anti-J6 campaign. How come people can't have any nuance? Why can we not have nuance in the mainstream? Is it just too blunt of an object?
There's not enough time for nuance. I mean, logistically, the way it is, you have 4, 5, 6 minutes max, and you have to take extreme issues so that you can assert yourself and have that clip, that moment go out on social media. Right?
It's reprehensible. It's disgusting.
It's
the worst thing since the British came in.
Sounded like Bernie Sanders every time he says climate change. That guy has already a stilted, halted way of talking, but whenever he says things, he doesn't know what to say, so he adds an extra syllable to. He's a climate change. because he's not comfortable.
You can't do
using
Bernie
that
Sanders the way I can do Bernie Sanders. And
No,
I can't do Bernie Sanders the way that I'd like to do Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders is he's a very caricaturable. Is that a thing? Yeah, something like that.
It sounds like something Janine should use.
Seems right. Let's do a little bit more Well, we're going to do Epstein after the next thing. Oh, okay, this one was just kind of fun, just kind of talking of the hypocrisy. I heard this clip. I've had this clip holding on of Nancy Pelosi talking about stocks, which it's really funny to me whenever I hear members of Congress get out there and have an opinion about something that they probably should just try to act like doesn't happen. Donald Trump had a press conference in the White House or in the Oval Office, like he keeps doing, and he's out there sitting at the desk and he's got people around. That's a weird move. Is it a mafia thing? Like, he's like, I'm at the table and I got my boys behind me and I'm going to tell you guys some stuff and like we're all on the same page. And the guys out there are going like, what's he going to say next? It could get riled. Wonder if I'm going to get canceled. I wonder if I'm going to be able to go back to my country club. And then the reporters are all out there and half of them are ready to clap and half of them are ready to jump on him. Here he is talking about the bill. They're having trade negotiations with China. He's taken the 160 whatever it was % tariffs. He's taken them down to 80. He's like, that seems like a good number. We're going to do 80 now. We're like, this was always going to be a negotiation. It was never going to be a thing where they were just like, this is a fixed deal. So of course the left has to say that he caved. Check him out talking about stocks. This is the first stock tip I've ever gotten from a U.S. president. Apparently it's time to buy, Steve. Get ready.
It's the biggest bill of its kind ever in the history of this country. And Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune have done an incredible job. I mean, I'll let you know we have to get a vote, but we have a lot of support for that bill. And if that happens on top of all of these trade deals that we're doing, this country will hit a point that you better go out and buy stock now. Let me tell you, this country will be like a rocket ship that goes straight up. This is going to be numbers that nobody's ever seen before. That's a very important element of all of this. If we get that. If you don't, and the Democrats are fighting it only because they want to fight. They have Trump derangement syndrome. If it was somebody else, they wouldn't fight. If you had a normal person, if you had some stiff sitting behind you, they'd be fine.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says no to banning congressional lawmakers from trading stock. It was in response to a question about a report that found dozens of members of Congress violated a law meant to stop insider trading and prevent conflicts of interest. Here's what Pelosi said.
Because this is a free market and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
Should they be able to participate in that, Steve?
With the dentures who don't necessarily fit, and every time she gets really angry, she starts.
Can they
to
file those
swing
things
the one
down?
arm. Can
someone file down the Nancy Pelosi dentures so that this is obviously an older clip, but I just remember her being like, it's a free market economy and we're free market economists. And we think that everyone should be able to trade the stocks. President gave you a stock tip. Apparently, you're supposed to go buy. I don't hate that.
Yeah,
I bought at the bottom.
The changing of the rates is a little bit worrisome to me. Like changing the tariff rates, like on a whim. It's like very FDR, changing the price of gold. And the story was like, oh, I want to increase the price of gold by 21 cents. Why? Well, because it's 7 times 3, and 7's a lucky number. I mean, just it's a little bit ham-handed. But on a good note here, we have Mike Johnson and John Thune, who probably got their pleasures off by hearing their name mentioned by Donald Trump in a positive fashion. It seems.
Is that a way you get your jollies? The president? Like, is anyone buying that? That guy needs to not be there. Anyway, John Thune, he's giving him a positive call. Didn't he also call it a primary? Didn't Trump also call it a primary Thomas Massey?
He always calls the primary Thomas Massey and Chip Roy, like the ones that are like actually there saying like, hey, we're kind of bankrupt right now. Now we need a big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, we need to spend more money. So anyway, that's not optimal. We're actually going to talk about funding, FBI funding in a second, because Cash didn't have any answers, but he did have like some fiery rhetoric. So we're going to kind of hit that in a sec. Let's just let's pivot over real quick and say thanks to the folks over at, where are we at today? Today is going to be a Patriot Protect moment. Folks, you can go to patriot-protect.com/Kyle. If you listen to our Sunday sit down, you get to hear the story from one of the founders of the company himself. Pretty funny guy, Skip Holt. DeepSeek is the Chinese AI data scraping company that goes out there and it's one of many opportunities for your data to be compromised. They're constantly doing hacks and moving things from American sensitive records into dark web purchasing. We talked about the Glengarry leads. If you guys are an 80s movies fan, you understand that there are companies that are out there constantly trying to sell off your information, whether it be your what they call the fulls, which is your name, your email address, your relatives, your addresses, your social securities, your work history, personal details, which gives cyber criminals either opportunities to scam you, whether it be phone or email, by representing a lot of information that they shouldn't otherwise have, or to impersonate you and set you up for significant financial losses. For the cost of keeping your Porsche line on over the night through a year, you can pretty much pay out for a very inexpensive service. These things are like less than $100 a month, less than $100 a year, rather. Check out their blackout service. Check out the search and destroy protocols that are available from our friends over at patriot-protect.com/KYLE. I think you save 15% on an annual for that. It's one of those things you kind of have to keep up. It's preventative. Basically, your goal is to spend less money in prevention than you would if you were to have a breach. And as we talked about on Sunday's Sit Down, essentially every American at this point, if you're an adult over the age of 18, you basically face an average of about $600 worth of fraud or scam throughout your lifetime per year. So if you can do something that is way cheaper than that, that's the way you do it. It's the ounce of prevention versus the pound of cure. Again, patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Good people, decent folks. And as I can tell, like the service seems to work. I'm not probably a really good scam target, but I've definitely had my stuff leaked since the Chinese gave it over. Just like they gave Steve Friend's stuff. All of our OPM status leak was always, it was always really comforting to know that one of our national security apparatus tools was like, hey, by the way, we also just gave your background check to the Chinese on accident. Sorry.
But we did give you LifeLock for a year. And I'm sure
yeah, LifeLock. Mm-hmm. They did give us LifeLock. I never signed up for it.
And I know that the person who arranged for that probably didn't find themselves with a lucrative position working for LifeLock right after their government service, right?
Right. That would be a conflict of interest. You can't do that, can you? Can you leave a company after you just worked and got a contract for that company? That's not allowed, is it?
I think you should ask every member of the Department of Defense as they go to Raytheon and Lockheed.
So it is a thing. All right, let's do Pope stuff. Should we do Pope stuff? That was on the thumbnail for today.
America's Pope. America.
That's pretty crazy, just in and of itself. The first American Pope in history, and the New York Times is jumping right in with their coverage, which I very much enjoy. The American Pope will face a fractured American church. His name is Pope Leo XIV. He is a guy from Chicago, but he had some formative years in Peru, so he's both Peruvian and American. If you were to go to NPR, which I also did, and NPR actually has I think it's probably the funniest write-up that I've ever seen on anything. It says, new pope has ties to U.S. and Peru. There are 1.4 billion Catholics who have a new pope. Robert Previs, also the New York Times calls him Bob, was born in Chicago and spent 2 decades in service to the church in Peru. He'll now be known as Pope Leo XIV. We went to the Vatican to hear what he had to say when the new pope blessed the faithful for the first time. And we hear someone who knows from the pope who knew him when he was in Chicago. And then they have like some audio interview. But that's like the entire story, which that was on their lead page. I thought that was fun. The best part is the New York Times is worried about it being a quote unquote fractured American church. What do you think that fracture looks like, Steve?
It's probably a pretty strict fracture between those who are Catholic and those who are like climate pagans or LGBTQ rainbow kamikaze enthusiasts who want to, couch their ideology as Marxist and say, well, no, secretly, this is actually what Catholics believe.
They're the Catholics that are in my parish's parking lot that say Texas Democrat, and they don't have the Choose Life sticker either. I saw people like Charlie Kirk going out there and saying, it's pretty cool. He's a registered Republican. When he was in America, he voted.
Was Mike Pence.
Right. And they were like, he's staunchly pro-life. He led a pro-life group. And I'm like, that's the entry level for being Catholic. If you're not pro-life, you're not a Catholic, period.
So he's not an outward Satanist. Okay, there's a little bit more criteria you would expect from the leader of the largest sect within Christianity across the globe.
One would think. Anyway, I just want to read this because the actual concern is exactly what you just said. Over the last several months, the American Catholic story has been ascendant of the Catholic right. I actually enjoy that a lot. And it's a lowercase r. But I want to be the Catholic right.
So it sounds like an anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremist.
Yeah,
Christian
you almost would think that
thing.
you'd almost think that those people could get like targeted by our former girlfriend. In January, a parade of right-wing Catholic power began streaming into Trump's remade Washington. Just weeks later came the hospitalization and decline of Pope Francis, who seemed to stand alone in offering a different vision of global Christian influence. This is actually kind of funny because I'm like, really? Vice President J.D. Vance, a Catholic in the new conservative style, also known as the historical style of Christianity for 2,000 years. The new conservative style was one of the last people to see Pope Francis alive.
Right. That was one of, too soon, but it was still hilarious. All the memes that were like, hey, JD, go visit Anthony Fauci now.
Right. What is he saying? Right. Okay. So I just think it's funny that they kind of just like toss it in there like, he's one of the last guys that saw him.
He might have been, things
it goes
happen,
towards my
you never
mafia
know.
thing. It's like Trump having the guys behind him in the office. He's like, these are my boys. I send them out to do things. Maybe they go talk to the Pope. Maybe they come talk to you. I don't know. Very funny. A brief meeting between the representatives showed a contrasting vision for Catholics and Catholic values in the world. The stunning arrival of a new Pope is an American, Chicago-born. His priorities seem to take him towards the mold of Francis. He's potentially a countervailing voice against the United States' new powerful strain of right-leaning Catholics. All of this makes me cringe so aggressively.
I mean, look, I'm not one of the initiated. I'm an uninitiated
You're Catholic adjacent
yes. person, we'll say, okay. Right? But I would like to not have to ask a regular question of, is the Pope Catholic? Which we basically had to do every single day that Francis was at the helm.
Sure. Yeah, well, he was a Jesuit. And so as we've talked about here a couple times, Jesuits have this sort of very strong leading. Latin America is quite pervasive with what's called liberation theology, which is essentially just Marxism, and it's dressed up in Catholicism. I think I told this on the call-in show that we did last night, but I'm going to ping this off you as well because it's worth a larger audience hearing it. My wife and I were trying to figure out what is the lure of Marxism. Like, why does it make there's some really smart people that get behind it. People that are very competent, that are you agree with them about normal things. They make good decisions in general. And then when it comes to voting, they have this like political lean towards Marxism. And this is the instinct that we had. Marxism, the sort of commie attitude. I've got a palate cleanse from Jesse Kelly, which will make you laugh, but talking about communism, that it is in fact a secular religion. You're nodding ahead, right? You're nodding your head.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's a secular religion. And it does the most dangerous thing that you can do with this sort of religion. It takes virtue, which we would describe in Christianity, broadly speaking, that the poor have value, that there's an innate value in human beings. And it adds an additional virtue that is, in fact, evil. And what it does is it creates virtue out of the vice of envy. Because it says envying what my neighbor has is, in fact, good because I want to redistribute it. And I'm going to be the judge. And so it comes in at you sideways. And I think that's maybe the lure of it. It allows people who feel envy, which is a vice. It is a deadly sin. And it allows you to act like that envy is in fact a good thing. And by the way, we created our own God, which is government, to be able to redistribute from our envy. And that's the sin of pride. What say you?
It's exactly what I was thinking and I was going to come out with. Look, it's not even just envy, it's coveting, right? Envy is saying like, hey, that's a really nice Porsche you got there. I would like to have a Porsche like that. But coveting is, I want that specific Porsche. I want to take it away from you. That's the appeal of Marxism, because the promise is, I will punish your enemies and I will reward your friends. You just have to be initiated into this. And then when you, in fact, covet something and you take something that isn't yours from the person because they're your enemy to punish them, and you are rewarded now because you're an initiated member, you're one of our friends, you get to have it, and you're actually a better person for that. We're gonna rub your belly and fill you with so much hubris and pride.
I like the rub your belly thing only because whenever you do rub a dog's belly, it makes you feel really good. And rubbing a person's belly makes me feel really weird.
No, the sternum rub is probably more.
The sternal rub is the only one. Okay, we'll get into some sternal rubs and some emergency response. I just want to end that the New York Times piece says the Pope assumes the role at a moment of extraordinary muscle and visibility for certain types of Catholicism, also known as like actual Catholicism.
Catholicism.
Brother, I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? And more than a third of the members of President Trump's cabinet are Catholic. And this is why it's relevant to the broader public. If you guys don't realize this, Donald Trump has leaned quite heavily on both Catholic Vote, a group that we worked with, and Catholics as voters, because they were persuadable and they did vote closer in mass towards Donald Trump, because even the Catholics that we would call cafeteria Catholics, they're like, oh, like I think pro-choice ideas are fine. I'm not, you're not really doing Catholicism.
No, you're doing Joe Biden Catholic.
You're Biden Catholic, which is exactly what they said here. They said the second president in the nation's history, Joseph R. Biden Jr., just left, the second Catholic president just left office a few months ago. And we saw how good he did. His wife is running his show for him. That is a decidedly non-biblical relationship.
It's entirely possible that the people that wrote this for the New York Times have no fundamental understanding of what Catholicism is. And again, I'm not initiated. I am a little bit adjacent.
You did go to Notre Dame.
There are no sects of Catholicism. It's just the church. That's why you all call it the church.
So that being said, this guy is an Augustinian, which is another order of monks, and they take the similar vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So that's worth people understanding those things. The Jesuits are kind of a funny little animal because they take the same vows. The Jesuits don't own things. That's what the vow of poverty says. The order owns things, but the order used to buy them really, really cool stuff. Because the Jesuits kind of like are able to pursue their own instincts and their own passions and whatnot in order to do what they call for the greater glory of God. They will go out and do things like become artists or become authors or become photojournalists. So they have like skills and they're often very educated. Jesuits are a formidable group because they are smart, because they are well educated in rhetoric and so on.
They're like hostage rescue team operators, right? Like that's all
they used
government
to parachute,
stuff.
Yeah, they would parachute them
but you have
into
awesome
places.
Skill set now.
That's exactly correct. So it's interesting. There's a similar vows with the Augustinians, but they kind of have like a more centrist leaning. So it'll be interesting to know. But by not owning stuff as a Jesuit, I knew Jesuit priests that had like diamond tipped grinders and like a whole suite of stone carving equipment. It was owned by the order. It wasn't owned by them individually, but it was theirs. I knew guys that had tens of thousands of dollars worth of camera equipment, and they would travel around and take, National Geographic pictures for the order. And so they got to do their passion in a way that maybe you couldn't even afford to buy that kind of equipment, but they lived otherwise pretty plain, but they had really cool stuff because they were part of an order that had a fair amount of money and power and an influence. So it's an interesting little dynamic for people who don't understand how Catholic orders work. It'll be interesting to see this guy. I don't have an answer about what he is, by the way. I'm just watching. I want him to end up being like a bro from Chicago. But
I mean, you want to know, like, does he like deep dish pizza or not, right? Like, I mean, those are the questions you could ask the Pope now. Like, hey, Cubs, White Sox, where are you falling?
Apparently,
right? I mean,
he's a Sox fan. What does that mean? What does that mean?
White Sox?
Yeah.
It means that he is, that's South Side. That means it's for the poor. The Cubs are North Side. That's rich.
Probably a problem. I feel like
That's Obama.
Obama's
Where's
what?
Julie Kelly fall in this?
She's on the South Side.
Is she a fan of this Pope?
Unclear. Haven't gotten the official opinion. What I've also decided is that I'm just going to pick up pom-poms and just cheer sarcastically for whatever the movement wants. This is my new favorite game. So you can see that I'll be much less adversarial. I want to cheer on people that are doing a great job. Before we do, let's talk about our friends at Patriot Coolers. You brought them up earlier. I'll do a read for them, and then we're going to do Epstein stuff. We can't help it. We did the Pope thing already, so let's go. All right, folks. Patriot Coolers. They are our friends, and we're fans of them since going back to 2017 in my household. Using their product for a long time. This is a wood grain. I don't know why you want metal that is wrapped in wood grain, but I liked it when I saw it, that other people had it. And in a non-communist way, I coveted what they had, but not the one that they had. And so I bought my own. And you guys can buy your own. It's patriotcoolers.com. That's the promo code KYLE, saves you 10%. They are a good American company with good people in it. They make a great product that actually does what it's supposed to do. They've got 50 stars on the bottom of every one of their cups. Yeah, I've got coffee in here. It's not going to spill. They put 13 bars on here. Patriot, instead of saying something like Yeti, because you're not a Yeti, you're not a snowman, whatnot, this is the woody mug that matches the woody background, that matches the fake wood in my car or my truck. Check them out if you guys want to find one of those. If you want one that is engraved or in traditional colors, they do the same thing. Good company, good product, good stuff that we've been using. I spend my own money on them. I buy them as gifts for people. You guys will also find yourself happy that you got them. Nobody has bought one and then tagged the Kyle Seraphin Show and said, hey, a-hole, you sold me a bill of goods. Don't buy something you don't need. But if you guys want a custom cooler, and if you have a corporate deal where you guys are looking out, you can reach out to me at info@KyleSeraphin.com, info@KyleSeraphin.com. I'll put you in touch with their brand manager. If you have a company that wants to make your own stuff, they will do large scale orders for your companies and as gifts and stuff. They're a good corporate gift too, because people will actually use them and they'll be like, oh, these are much nicer than the crap that I normally get, because they normally do get crap. Right, Steve? People get crap.
Sure. Do you think Pope Leo is going to be a Patriot Cooler?
He's going to. We could try to send him one. I know a guy who's going to be the minister. He's going to be the Vatican.
Send him a suspendable Patriot
We're going to
Cooler.
send the Pope a suspendable mug. I just need to figure out, I'll get one to Brian and I'll be like, Brian, this is for the Pope. I don't need him to show it in public. I just want to know that it's in the Vatican, along with the priceless chalices and artwork and all the other things that are there. My wife and I were talking about illegal immigration because apparently this Pope is like pro-open borders, like anti-Trump agenda on that, said J.D. Vance is wrong about, the priorities of love of people. It's like, well, yeah, there's government and then there's religion and they're not the same thing, certainly not in America. But we were thinking about moving to the Vatican. And I don't know if your family wants to come as well, but I think we can just show up in the Vatican and demand food, lodging, medical care. I think we can demand housing and then we can probably break other laws if we want.
They have Vatican walls too. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think we're just going to go to the Vatican and set up shop and then just be there and then demand that they treat it. And then we might start voting for things, just like illegal aliens do in our country. Does that seem reasonable?
According to James Langford, Oklahoma senator, they're deserving of due process.
I want to have that due process. I also want to, like I said, I was going to do some MAGA cheerleader stuff. So let me do some cheerleading here. Steve, we're taking this very seriously. This happened the other day. This was the setup for the way that the week started. So we're going to do the way the week started. And then yesterday, as the week was coming to an end, here is something that, for people, we're talking about prayer. We're talking about the Holy Spirit and guidance. This is a good friend of mine, James OKeefe, he's a national treasure.
I'm going dark.
He's going dark.
I'm not suicidal.
No.
Pray for me. This one scares me, guys.
It scares him.
It didn't scare him to not set up 2 cameras instead of 1.
2 cameras. That's how you let people know that you're really serious and that things are about to happen for you. All of that was to set up a drop about something about Prince Andrew, which we heard about a long time ago. I like leaving the empty chair there with the brick wall for some reason. I like the way this looks visually on the screen. It's just like an empty chair. At any moment, James could come back to us and tell us what he was scared of.
This is the Clint Eastwood speech at the RNC, the empty chair.
Well, we'll talk to the empty chair for a second. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to cut over to Pam Bondi, which we played yesterday. Apparently, the thing that he was going to release was about Epstein. And then Pam Bondi scooped James OKeefe on his story, which was that Pam Bondi was hiding the Epstein Files, which we know that she's the Attorney General, so she would have access to. Here she is again answering. This is the same thing we played yesterday.
James Comer said yesterday that all the Epstein Files are missing. Can you confirm the status of them? We still haven't heard from you.
No, the FBI, they're reviewing, there are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going through that. I haven't seen that statement, but I'll call him later and find out.
And by him, she's talking about Kash Patel. She's going to call him. So that was apparently what the bombshell was going to be. And James believes that Pam Bondi scooped James on Pam Bondi's hidden video recording that they were going to release. They asked for comment, and that's why she went out and gave this information. What's crazy is I got a phone call from Alex Jones while I was prepping for the show. It's why I was a minute and a half late, because I was a little bit behind the curve. I wasn't expecting to hear Alex Jones first thing in the morning.
Does he sound like he always does that early, or is that, got
Hey, Kyle, I don't want to bother you real quick, but let me just, so I've been thinking about this thing that's been going on, and you came on, and everything you said is it's mind blowing, and I'm okay. I'm not gonna explain.
Yes, it's exactly what Alex Jones is. Alex Jones. In fact, his producer actually was calling me a second ago, and even though I have my phone in the Faraday bag that I always keep it in, it went through my computer, and I was like, I had to turn it off. What we said on Alex Jones's program was exactly what Pam Bondi just said. I think the number tens of thousands of videos is probably an exaggeration. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think she has any idea like that many, but tens of thousands of files, sure. But what we were told is that we had people at FBI headquarters that were trying to redact this information so that they could try to make some of it public because they made that promise and they overpromised and underdelivered, right?
Yes,
that's what happened.
And that was not an insignificant amount of time ago. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting now. That's
right.
Coming up on 8 weeks.
We also just saw Operation Cross Country, which we talked about yesterday.
Isn't it Restore Justice now?
It's been rebranded as Restore Justice, and it basically got the same results that it's been getting for about 20 years, which is to say that when the FBI does focus on child sex trafficking and child sexual assault material or abuse material, they can find people who do it. It is a thing within the FBI's power, and they do it real quickly. Do you want to talk quickly about the transactional business of going after child pornographers and what the pace is compared to other FBI cases?
I mean, if you're actually like clever in the way that you do your work, you could set it up so that you essentially could be going on 1, 2, maybe even 3 arrests and search warrants every single week. As an individual member of a squad, then you could be going out every single day, because the work tempo, it's very much, it's similar to, it's this weird kissing cousin to Indian country. And that is to say that, one is very low tech, one is very high tech. But there's a tremendous volume of them. They're not overly complicated. You just send the subpoena out, you get the IP address, and I mean, it's just turning a wrench. Next case up, next case up, next case up. And it's incredibly productive as a result. So if you're a stat-driven organization like the FBI still has the quota system, you could be going out on almost daily arrests.
That might be the most important 90 seconds of today's program for people to understand that the transactional business of running after child pornographers and child sex traffickers that are putting it on the video and the internet is so low hanging when it comes to fruit. What you just said, your experience was out of what, Jacksonville?
Yes.
Okay. And I was in Washington field office, and we would see the child pornography, the VCAC Squad is what they call it, violent crimes against children. The VCAC Squad was doing probably 3 arrests and or search warrants a week at any given week without any difficulty. Like, they were overworked.
Yes. And I mean, you're talking about squads, not a lot of agents on that. I mean, I did stuff by myself. So, I mean, I'll even take it out of the FBI context to the real police, right? I would work with the sheriff's office here, Volusia County Sheriff's Office. They had a half dozen people. 1 or 2 of them were just tech guys. They weren't actually actively investigating cases. Another one was a sergeant. So you had about 4 detectives. I would go out weekly with them on arrests in 1 county. It's that much volume of casework that goes on there.
And that's out of a smaller field office, because Jacksonville's not big. Washington field is big, but they're everywhere. They're everywhere. They're all over the place. It's nationwide, and it's nonstop. And I think we're not exaggerating when we say, if you took every single FBI agent and supervisor and all the people that were involved in that, and you put them all to work running after child sex traffickers and child pornographers, you would never not have work all the time.
Fully assigned. Yes.
We could do it full time. Okay. So that's why Epstein, it's a symbol, I think, of a broader problem, which is that we were told this was transparent. We had the Bindergate nonsense where they brought people to the White House. James O'Keefe thought he caught Pam Bondi with her hand in the cookie jar, which I think is ridiculous. Here's his bombshell that he dropped yesterday. Pam Bondi is a very bad person. I tend to give Pam Bondi a lot more grace, because I don't think the Attorney General is supposed to be the expert on all things DOJ. They're supposed to give vision, and then the AAGs are actually supposed to do the work. That's why Harmeet Dillon's great. That's why it's good to see Ed Martin over there. This is James standing. I don't even know what he's standing in front of. He's standing in front of palm trees doing a stand-up like journalist thing that he's pre-recorded. I half expect him to say, I'm here live, even though it's taped, but here it is.
Yesterday, Attorney General of the United States Pam Bondi was at the White House and disclosed what she represented as brand new information in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. The existence of tens of thousands of videos featuring little children.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn.
Now, this is the first time an official has publicly acknowledged that videos of Epstein and his victims exist. What you may not know is just 9 days prior, the Attorney General had a very similar conversation with a total stranger in a restaurant.
Do you know when the Epstein Files are going to get released?
We hope soon. The FBI's been...
Okay.
So,
any dates?
No, you know what it is? There are tens of thousands of videos.
Yeah.
And it's all with little kids. So they have to go through every one.
In the past.
So a completely reasonable, consistent explanation that she clearly was not hiding at all.
I mean, think about all the secret conversations that you've had in a lunch counter with complete strangers that you were hiding the information and then thinking that that's the bombshell.
None coming to mind right now. I mean, I haven't had, though, too many lunch dates with people who were assistant or maybe undersecretary, deputy assistant to the manager within some sort of government bureaucracy.
It's really goofy to see that sort of thing. And it's when you don't know what you're talking about. Like we were talking about the org chart earlier. It's like, if you don't know what the org chart looks like, then maybe you think somebody's really senior level and they're not. Epstein Files, still worth talking about. Here's a question that was asked of Kash Patel, because he went out and was testifying. He was supposed to be talking about the budget, and then he apparently didn't do the budget because he was too busy doing selfies with HRT and doing recruitment videos, which they're doing a great job recruiting new intel analysts. This is Senator Kennedy asked him questions. I think it's reasonable to ask, if you're an elderly person, Will it happen within my lifetime?
Person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When you think you'll have it done, Cash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
So he says irrelevant, but what he means is like damaging or illegal or illicit or not the public's business. But do you think we're ever going to see any of that stuff, Steve, just based on that answer?
No, 0% chance. And they've completely painted themselves into a corner on this. It's a complete self-own.
Mm-hmm.
And you've said it before, it would not make a difference to you or me or any member of the Kyle Seraphin Show audience to know the individuals who are on the Epstein list, unless Bill Gates is one of your listeners. You wouldn't change your status in life, right? You want to know that there is appropriate staffing and resources being thrown at investigating these people. So to say like, hey, look, we've got a task force up and we're investigating 300 people. We can't give you their names because that would compromise an ongoing investigation.
Mm-hmm.
But instead they said, oh, we're going to give them to these influencers. And then they completely crapped the bed on that one. And now people are really running out of patience. And the new rule, the cutesy time rule, like we're going to wait 628 months is not going to pass muster, especially when it comes to issues like child exploitation.
No, because there's ongoing, the potential is if somebody is involved in it then, that they're probably involved in it now because it shows a certain proclivity. It's not like sex offenders in the child sex game stop in anybody's experience. Like these people need to be stopped externally.
I mean, they do, and the ongoing nature of it. And then also, the fact is like there are high prominent people, like well-known people that we're all sort of assuming are on this list. And it goes back to the oligarchy, right? That Bernie Sanders is railing about. There's just powerful people that are manipulating things. That is contributing to that narrative forever because the fact that they've promised this information to the American people and now they've failed to deliver on it. And now they're continuing to push it off and say like, oh, we're working on it. We're giving you this explanation, which on its face, it could be a reasonable explanation, but it kind of isn't because they say, well, you need to redact the personal information of the victims. That doesn't change the fact that you have a list of names of subjects. You don't even need a binder for that. You just need like 2 pages stapled together. Hand it out.
It would be totally reasonable to do that. We're going to do a little bit more stuff on this because, like I said, he was at the budget hearing. There was this kind of contentious thing between Madeline Dean, who I'd never heard of before, but that sounds pretty standard, that backbenchers in Congress are now trying to get their name out there because everybody's trying to lead the Democrat Party. They don't have it. Before we do that, let's just if you're watching over on Rumble and you have not hit our like, if you have not given us a thumbs up, please do that and do the same thing over on YouTube for all of you that are watching. Some of you are participating in our experiment. I will give you guys data in another week or so, but we really appreciate you checking us out over on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@KyleSeraphin. You can always see us at Kyle Seraphin over on X as well. The locals, which is where we did our call-in show last night, is KyleSeraphin.com. So I'm just plugging all the places where you can find us. We also have like ongoing discussions there. So if you guys have things you want to have covered, you can start threads and talk to the community that's part of it. Get about 1,000 people that are paying attention to what's down there. And then lastly, if you want to share on Spotify, you get video and audio. It's KyleSeraphinShow.com. It'll just take you to the Spotify. Even if you don't download the app, you can still use it there and listen online from the webpage. Steve, 2 things that I learned that were kind of wild today. Wild this week. Number 1 is I found out that Dan Bongino, despite having a 20-man protective detail, and Kash Patel, who has a similarly sized detail, have decided to have themselves issued FBI sidearms in addition to the badge that we saw Kash Patel wearing the other day. Do you want to tell people a little bit why that would be, first of all, tactically dangerous if you're on a protection detail, and then sort of like the ridiculousness of it as well on top of it?
Oh, well, first, mentioning, I think it's probably not tactically smart to wear a law enforcement badge on your hip and not have a firearm.
I think he heard you, and that's why he decided to have himself issued a gun this week.
Yeah. But essentially, you have the protective detail there, and they're going to be engaging in any sort of kinetic action against threats to you. If you have the gun, the presumption is you're going to be like at their side doing that. And then the question is, like, have you trained with them? You're the protectee in that situation. Like, they're diving in front of you to protect you. They don't need you to have a weapon out and have your finger on the trigger because you're engaging a target. So that presents something that's a problem. And then also, like, do they comply and comport with the firearms training unit standards? Are they going to qualify on the range quarterly? Are they going to go to Quantico and send 5,000 rounds down range over a course of 20 weeks so that they can get their skill set up? I mean, I don't think I want them doing that. I'd rather have them doing things like addressing the Epstein list and other problems that they can address with the swipe of a pen, policy-wise, and the way we can revoke some security clearances rather than working on their skill set. I'm not begrudging them to have that skill set. I don't think, though, that if you're the director or the deputy director who are coming from the outside, that having the weapon is necessarily a good idea.
There's two ways that I'll accept it. It's basically you have to get rid of your detail and do what other people have done. You can go the Louis Freeh model. You can go the J. Edgar Hoover model, where you bring a special assistant who's also armed, and it's just two guys rolling around with a weapon. That's an option. Or you can have a security detail and you don't carry a weapon because you're a liability. You're like the mob boss who sends all the henchmen, and then like he's the last guy left and he's got the revolver, but he's never trained with it. So he
Derringer 2-shot.
Yeah, he doesn't belong holding on to it, that kind of thing. Apparently, according to sources that I have, they went and qualified this week on Wednesday. They went down to Quantico and were able to get issued handguns by the what's called FTU, the Firearm Trainings Unit.
Then I want to see them doing the Louis Freeh. Where they have like the one assistant going with them. And the story about Freeh was like he would get a trinket or some sort of a souvenir for his children whenever he traveled around. And like he would hop out of the car and the one security detail guy would be like, "Sir, I got to go clear it." He's like, if the assassin is waiting in this little shop here on the off chance the FBI director rolls in here and he happens to recognize me, then it's just my day. And it's a good thing I'm armed.
Right. I mean, if you want to be, and I had people tell me that they had spent time with Cash in Africa and he was armed when he was doing that. So that's not, I mean, like, I'm sure he knows how to handle a gun. He offered to go shoot machine guns with me in Vegas. We never actually did it, but fine. Like, either you're a guy who's a man that doesn't need a protective detail. Do you know how I know the FBI director's coming? Because his freaking detail and the entire motorcade come rolling in. Or you can just run the same way that every other famous person is, that just kind of rolls under the radar, that has significantly more net worth and doesn't need to have that sort of pomp and circumstance. It's not required.
The motorcade plus the additional SWAT teams that got engaged to help and assist with that, even though the FBI director is rolling into a field office, which is a secured location filled with employees who theoretically have been vetted and able to hold a security clearance. So I don't think there should be a threat, but that's how they actually typically do the visits to the field offices for the FBI director.
Part of it is just making you feel like you're a big shot. So there's that. All right, here's where he didn't feel like a big shot, but he was kind of trying, kind of feeling his oats. He was people on the right that are more like team cheerleaders. I guess that's me now. We're really excited about this interchange where he really put this woman in her place. But this is the second revelation that I had this week because I didn't read the confirmation stuff beforehand. We'll drop this on you guys in just 1 second. First, let's go ahead and hear that exchange.
Person with the brain and a beating.
That is not the exchange. Where's Madeline on here? I had her first, I thought, and maybe not. Maybe I don't have it. Give me a second. I'm going to grab it up. Steve?
Well, John Kennedy there. I mean, he is a person allegedly with a brain. So
Yeah. He's a nice guy. Okay, here you go. Here's Kash Patel getting into that skirmish back and forth with Madeline Dean from Pennsylvania.
Agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
you want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the book because there's no enemies list on that book.
So
there are people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people, and they were rightly called out. And you should give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times, and you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury. Tell the American people how I broke the law and committed a felony. Have the audacity to actually put the facts forward instead of lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second donation hit.
The answer is both.
I hate her because she said insurrectionists, talked about cops that were killed. She's obviously a dishonest actor in that space. She called them political prisoners, which is an obnoxious thing to do about people, some of whom are her constituents.
She's extremely patronizing and 100% dishonest about the fact that police officers were killed on January 6th by the people that were at the Capitol. I mean, that's factually inaccurate.
Correct.
So, I mean, he stood his ground on that, and that's probably a good thing for him.
It is. And then she accused him of perjury, and he got all incensed about it. And there's pretty good evidence. I'd never read the confirmation hearing testimony. There's 147 pages or so of the questions the senators sent out for him before they did the confirmation vote. And Cory Booker in particular asked some very pointed questions, which I know I have at least circumstantial evidence he lied about. So that's problematic too. And so when she said both, even though I hated everything she did in the lead up to it, I think Madeleine Dean might be right. That there are, in fact, problems either with his memory. Because, look, you and I have been on some shows, right? And there are people who would be like, hey, have you been on, what is that one guy's show that we were on that was called like the Up Periscope Network or whatever? The Making Sense of the Madness? What was that guy's name?
I don't remember. And we were on multiple times.
We were on there twice, and I don't remember his name. And if you brought it up, I'd be like, that sounds familiar. I would probably like, maybe, probably. And then, but there's nobody whose show I've been on 8 times that I don't remember. Nobody.
I think 8 times kind of like crosses that threshold of you have some familiarity. The producer probably has your cell phone and you're arranging things more regularly then.
Yeah, like for example, like my phone rang and I looked down and I didn't know what it was and I was like, and it says Daria and I'm like, Daria? I don't even know anybody. Oh yeah, that's InfoWars. Like
okay.
You
I
just know.
The MTV cartoon.
No, I wish it was MTV. I want to go do MTV. But it's relevant to know that like if you've been on the program 8 times, you know. And so listen, I didn't listen to all those confirmation hearings, mostly because I was like, I can't look at it. I wanted to see him confirmed. But I don't stand by lying to get your job. It turns out you and I have this weird thing that we just feel like people should be honest, particularly if you want to go and run our old agency. That may have been the real problem we had in the first place, that people that were comfortable with lying. We're calling this, I can't remember what Phil Kennedy called it, but Phil called it, I think it like the Woods Rule. And it says, no matter who you nominate to be FBI director, you get Jim Comey. That's our new rule. What say you?
Integrity is only a problem if you got it.
God, it's so frustrating. I hate that. I hate that for both of us. I hate that for everybody. All right, let's do a final story here because this actually was truly shocking to me. This is the story of Tyree Nichols. This came out of Memphis a couple years back. This was in 2023. And when we saw it, I'm pretty confident you and I actually covered this on the show. They showed, if you guys remember, there was some body cam footage. There was camera footage from a surveillance camera on a pole cam that saw 5 police officers appearing to beat a man to death when he basically represented no threat to them. I got some clips that we're going to jump into. So here's a little bit of the body cam footage. This is actually pretty hard to watch because we kind of expect cops to be one thing. And then the story is that they were acquitted this week in a pretty shocking move, I would say. The biggest piece of it is actually going to be the end of the story that I'm going to play the second video clip.
Watch out, watch out! Watch out! Nichols heard calling out for his mother, her home about 100 yards from where he was beaten to death. 2 officers then seen holding Nichols down as a third kicks him. Less than a minute later, another comes in with a baton. The beating of the unarmed father lasting nearly 3 minutes before the 5 officers step away. A few minutes later, several more officers arriving on scene, standing by, none appearing to provide aid to Nichols until 20 minutes after the attack. EMTs not seen for more than 22 minutes after the end of the beating. 3 days later, Nichols died at the hospital.
Yeah, that's pretty ugly. On Wednesday, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith were all acquitted on counts of second-degree murder, a single count of aggravated assault, and 2 counts of aggregated kidnapping, 2 counts of official misconduct, and a count of official oppression. I didn't even know that was a thing. That must be a Tennessee thing. So all these guys were done. That was kind of wild. The wildest thing is not that, but you remember your impression at the time of what that was, the sort of gang reprisal look that it had?
Yeah, and I think there was reporting at the time also that those guys were affiliated with a gang. It might have actually been like an organized hit on that guy.
Right. Here's Tucker Carlson covering it back at the time, back when he was still on Fox. This is before he was part of the Trump administration. Oh, sorry, he got sent somewhere else. He's not part of the Trump. Everybody else in Fox, right?
So the race riots of 2020, of course, were never about George Floyd, obviously. That's why there are no statues of him in American cities. They were about changing the country forever. And the first step, of course, was defunding police departments across the country and forcing them to lower their standards to attract unqualified applicants, hiring officers based on skin color rather than integrity or skill or self-control, all in the name of equity. Now, does that result in better policing? Well, what happened in Memphis a few weeks ago is one indicator. At least 2 of the 5 officers who apparently beat Tyree Nicholas to death were hired under lax diversity-driven standards. They're affirmative action hires. And yet, instead of admitting that, and it's true, the media are diverting attention from this fact by accusing these 5 officers, who are all black, of somehow being white supremacists.
Once again, a young black man's death at the hands of police is sparking demands for change regarding police brutality and systemic racism in America.
This is about structural racism. It's about white supremacy, but it's also about a system of toxic masculinity, patriarchy, and an overall system of oppression.
So it is nonsense that black and brown officers have not been part of the problem of systemic racism and policing.
Yes, racism, and the role it almost certainly played in the death of Tyree Nichols in Memphis. The idea that black and brown people can't internalize white supremacist tropes, narratives, ways of seeing the world is something that I, as a brown man, am telling you is just patently untrue.
That was Mehdi Hasan. He's my favorite. That was a messaging campaign that was pushed out by the political left in the media at the time. They were talking about it was white supremacy. It doesn't matter if they're black men. They can take this thing in and they can represent white supremacy and oppression, even though they don't, look the way that the people that would agree with them apparently look.
This is Joe Biden on The View, where the allegation comes to him and he basically speaks it into existence and actually proves it there, right? So the narrative that they're trying to say is that it was racism, structural racism, that resulted in 5 black guys killing another black guy. And then in order to prove that we're getting beyond the structural racism that is inherent in our system, a bunch of white people acquitted these black guys of this murder.
That's the shocking part. Listen to the end of this little clip here. This is coming from some local news on CBS.
The jury has found 3 former police officers charged in the deadly beating of Tyree Nichols not guilty on all 7 state counts. The officers' charges included second-degree murder, aggravated assault, and aggravated kidnapping.
In emotional cases like this. And as you mentioned, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Justin Smith, all found not guilty. They each faced 7 charges, the big one being second-degree murder. That was punishable by up to 15 to 25 years in prison. Official oppression, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, all those charges that you mentioned, all not guilty. A little background here on this jury, though. This happened in Memphis, Shelby County, near the Arkansas border. That's where Memphis is. Well, during the course of this trial, they were saying we needed to find an impartial jury. So they had to go 300 plus miles to Chattanooga area, Hamilton County, to find that jury. So the jury is not from Memphis. They are from Hamilton County, 300 plus miles away. We found out it is an all-white jury. There were no African Americans on that jury. The jury in Memphis is a predominantly African-American town. So that's something that now people are talking about. A little bit more of some perspective here. There was a federal trial before this, and those officers either pled guilty or were found guilty of charges, but they were lesser charges, everything from excessive force with injury and witness tampering. They have not been sentenced for the federal crimes that they were convicted of, so we're going to...
So that's still pending here. But the crazy thing to me is that they went 300 miles away to find a white jury. It is the exact opposite of what we used to hear about how you would find an all-white jury that would go and immediately convict the black person because it was a race thing.
Kill a mockingbird, man.
Yeah, we've had like great historical fiction written about it to tell us that important story, and now they've done the exact opposite. Like that is a guilt-ridden group of people that they had to go 300 miles to find an acquittal on that. How crazy! Because if they did it in Memphis, it would have been a slam dunk that somebody killed somebody in their community.
I mean, just go back to the facts. The facts support one thing or another. I mean, like, I did some research right before we went on about like what the actual defense is. Because to me, you know, you're watching the video, like, what is the defense? And what they claimed was that, like, well, you know, another guy who did plead guilty was doing most of it. And we were just like there holding him. So we should be acquitted of these charges. I mean, that's a pretty weak defense. And yet people just couldn't wait to do backflips to prove just how not racist they were and acquit 3 murderers of a murder of another black guy.
Because racism. Like I said, the reason they do this stuff is because it works. I've got a great clip that's going to be kind of our palate cleanse for the day. This is a piece from Jesse Kelly, who I think is sometimes our spirit animal in the media for the voice that he has. He gets away with saying a lot of like really true things, and he punches down on commies, which is one of our favorite things to see happen. So I'm going to play that, and then we'll come back. We'll do AMRAD wrap up here of what you guys got coming up, and then we'll sign off. So enjoy a little palate cleanse here. We'll stay on the screen with Jesse Kelly because it'll make us smile.
Communists are religious, not ideological, not political. Religious. They view all other religions as competing religions. So there are religions that are accepting of others, and then there are religions that are not. And I'm not actually telling you that religions that reject all others are bad, but you had better understand when you're dealing with one of those, I'll tell you that much. When the communists took over the Soviet Union was an Orthodox Christian, that was its religious base. I've read stories that it would make you weep of what they did to the pastors there, torturing them. When his communists took over China, obviously Buddhism is one of the many different kinds of religions over there, but one of the main ones. They couldn't wait to torture and murder the monks, tear down the temples.
The whole point has always been like there are some religions that are not going to tolerate another one. And that's what we keep seeing, which is why I see New York Times pieces talking about a new pope and the fractured political right acting like somehow being right leaning and conservative is not a Christian position, is a wild, wild take. But that only happens if you do not tolerate any other religions, which is sort of where I think the commies that hate it come from. So anyway, I thought that was kind of a fun little way to wrap the week up as we consider the religious implications of a new pope who we hope is better. Steve, what do you got coming up for AMRAD?
Oh, we're looking forward to it tomorrow, 10:30 Eastern time, rumble.com/AMRADPod. Garrett and I doing the Saturday tradition, going to be doing the grab bag. We're going to be talking about some of the worst people on earth, the liberal white women from the suburbs who will cut the genitals off their own children in order to impress their friends at Sunday brunch. But in this case, it's people who are close to power, being like first ladies of the United States of America. So join us tomorrow, 10:30 Eastern time. And guys, have a great weekend.
Thanks, buddy. You have a good weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Folks, that's it for us today. Thanks for following us over there. Make sure you're giving us a thumbs up over on Rumbles and on YouTube. All of those things are appreciated. Leave us a comment. I'm looking into them. I'm reading them, and I respond to as many as I can. You'll probably see that happening. If you guys want to support the show, you can always go over to Locals. It's KyleSeraphin.com. You can be a financial supporter of the show. I think it's $5 a month, or it's even cheaper than that if you want to do an annual. Keeps us on the air, keeps us doing the thing we're doing. It keeps us honest and accountable only to you and nobody else. Guys, make sure you subscribe where that is and share our Spotify link, which is KyleSeraphinShow.com. God bless all of you. I hope you have a fantastic weekend coming up. I'm going to do my best to either be a MAGA cheerleader or off my phone altogether. And we've got a very interesting Sunday sit down, which is a panel discussion with Peter Johnson, with Sarah Adams, who you've often seen on the Sean Ryan Show, a guy named Boone, who was one of the CIA contractors at Benghazi, and one of the local medics here in the area that handles SWAT stuff, about what the terrorist threat looks like, what's coming up, and why we probably aren't prepared for it, what you can do yourself if you're an individual officer, if you're an individual medic, or if you're just a concerned citizen who wants to kind of like get things moving in your community and have those conversations. We're going to have a panel discussion on what it looks like, and probably a white paper coming out as well about that. So we'll see you there for the Sunday sit down, either tomorrow on Locals, Sunday at 1 p.m. here on all the places you're seeing streaming. God bless you. I look forward to seeing you again, like I say, over the weekend.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.